Hi, guys. Trevor Swenson for Through the Darkness, a discussion on trauma and stressor disorder and PTSD and my personal journey with it and through it. One of the most common questions I get when people really get to asking deep questions in discussions of PTSD, trauma, and stressor disorder is, what does it feel like to have PTSD? What are you going through? People don't know what questions to ask. They don't know what it is as a rule of thumb. They don't know how it manifests itself in people's lives. They just don't even really know how to start that conversation. So I thought it would be a good idea to do an episode on Through the Darkness on what it feels like for me to have PTSD, what my days are like, how it's impacted my life, and how it's changed me. There really are three major areas that really have impacted me deeply and affected my ability to function comfortably in life. It's a battle, and I like to say that these three things are warring at each other all of the time. It's one of the three all of the time. And if you think about a time, the first one is fear and anxiety. And if you can think about a time that you were unbelievably afraid or scared, and whether that be somebody scared you or you were in a situation that was very scary for a moment, or a bear walks out onto the trail in front of you or up behind me like it could right now. uh, that feeling that you had, that rush of adrenaline to where your fingers go numb and tingle, your toes tingle, and that dump of adrenaline and that fear, that feeling of fear, we all know it. It's that with trauma and stressor disorder, you learn to live with it for long periods of time, and a lot of times it's very dissociative, meaning that you don't even know where it's coming from. There is nothing in front of you at sometimes. Sometimes it may be tied to a trigger, which I'll talk about here in a moment, but you feel unsettled a lot. And by a lot, it's not, wow, that was uncomfortable. It's, I was unsettled all day today, and I was yesterday, and I was the day before. It's been about a week of just being unsettled. It's very awful to go through. Depression, part of my PTSD is that I am also diagnosed with major depressive disorder, which through my entire adult life I didn't struggle with depression at all. And to have major depressive disorder is, again, I will say everybody has bad days. Everybody feels depressed about one thing or another at particular points or many points over the course of their life. Major depressive disorder for me is very dissociative. I don't know why it feels like I have a heavy, wet wool blanket over the top of me for days, sometimes weeks on end. I don't even know where it's coming from. It's just one of the ways that PTSD manifests itself that is very, very uncomfortable and very painful and really messes with your quality of life. The other thing I experience a lot of is anger, whether it be anger about the situation surrounding my PTSD or anger about why, the question, why me, which I will also cover in an upcoming topic. There's a lot of anger, and it's not anger that is directed at people in my family or my close friends. I'm just angry, very, very angry, and it's something that I really need to be cognizant of and very, very careful about, because it is very easy to hurt people with anger and with depression and with anxiety when how you're feeling turns into words and actions that you say and act out. And so it really is a challenge. One of the most devastating things for me with trauma and stressor disorder, when I knew that there was a real problem brewing before my official diagnosis years ago, is I began losing interest and passion in things that normally I absolutely could not wait to get started, could not wait to do, people I could not wait to hang out with. All of it was gone. All of it. Like there was nothing that I was excited about anymore. And that is a very dangerous place to be if you don't know what's going on, which is one of the reasons I want you to get help if you're under the sound of my voice, if you haven't already. That is not how life is intended to be lived out, with not having things to look forward to. And again, with the dissociation, not knowing where it's coming from, not being able to explain it, it's very, very disheartening and very depressing, which again leads right back into this, I like to call it the toilet bowl of symptoms, as far as how it feels to be walking through trauma and stressor disorder. There's an overwhelming sense of being empty as well. And when I say empty, it's indifferent to everything. You could tell me that both of my pant legs were on fire and I would have an attitude of, well, I guess that is just the way it's going to be for the time being. Complete indifference. And again, that is not a way to continue living your life. You need to get help for that. There is so much out there for us to enjoy and so much to be passionate about and so much to fill our hearts and souls and minds with, that is healthy, that is an active, great part of life. But that is one of the things that I really struggle with. I can't tell you, in the worst part of my journey with PTSD, the number of phone calls or texts that I would get from close friends that truly did love me, that wanted to hang out with me, that wanted to spend time with me, and I just did not have the emotional or cognitive capacity to be of any value in whatever it is that they wanted to partake in, whether it was hunting or fishing or anything outdoors or college hockey or whatever it is that really makes you go. When you start losing that passion, please start asking the questions and be honest with yourself. What is unresolved in my life that might be causing me to feel like this? The zero social energy. Again, I'll use an example. When I would see somebody stop by at my house, get out of a vehicle and start walking up to the front door, I would have this overwhelming sense of, I can't do this right now. I don't have anything to contribute to a conversation. I'm completely disengaged as a human being mentally. And again, if that is a symptom, along with these other symptoms, please ask yourself deep questions, ask health providers deep questions, why this might be happening, and be open and be honest about things that maybe are unresolved or unprocessed in your life. Isolation. You have this overwhelming feeling of wanting to be isolated and away from people. People that absolutely love and adore you, people that want nothing more than just to be around you. You have an overwhelming sense of, I just need to be where there's quiet and where there is no stimulus, to where there's no chattering or yattering or questions that are just asked to make conversation. It's overwhelming in a social sense, and that is difficult when you think about how much social interaction we have. It's very easy, especially with social media and all the other platforms, to become completely isolated. And I will tell you this, and I figured it out for myself, that if you're going to isolate, bring God. And isolate with a goal to heal. Isolate with a goal to fill yourself up with good, healthy things, like the woods, like the sound of birds, rushing water, whatever it might be, silence, healthy silence. Bring God. Never go alone to beat yourself up or to dwell on how difficult and awful things are. I found that it was much more valuable to go searching for answers and to spend time, quiet time, in prayer, in meditation, reading the Bible, whatever it might be, to fill your mind with healthy things over and over and over and over again. There's also a very strong sense of lack of validation because PTSD, trauma and stressor disorder, are things that you can't see, yet are so deeply painful and wounding and difficult to walk through. There is lack of validation. One of the most hurtful things that somebody with trauma and stressor disorder or PTSD hears is, that really wouldn't have affected me like it affected you. And I'm going to say this many, many times over the course of this series, Through the Darkness. Nobody defines your trauma except for you. Your trauma is your trauma. What is not traumatic to one person may be completely traumatic to you. And there's this overwhelming sense of lack of validation of what is traumatic to individual, beautiful people, valuable people. And if you have a chance to validate somebody's trauma, please understand that validation is very, very healing, because the fact of the matter is that I do have PTSD, that I do have trauma and stressor disorder, that I do have major depressive disorder, that I do struggle with all of these things mightily. The last thing I need to hear is that wouldn't have been difficult or damaged me. I guess I can't really relate to what you're saying. So please stay away from that particular conversation and approach people with trauma and stressor disorder and unresolved trauma with a sense of empathy, which is working as hard as you can to feel like that person is feeling. What are they feeling right now? It's very, very important. Hypervigilance is another thing that I go through very, very regularly. This overwhelming sense of something bad is going to happen, and it's going to happen very soon, and I don't know if I have the ability mentally or physically to stand up against it. That's a really ugly way to exist, and I've had to really, really work hard at hypervigilance, because when you develop trauma and stressor disorder, in my case, my mind was in the fight, flight, freeze, fawn cycle for so long, for so many years, that to uncondition that is very difficult. And so the raw feelings of fear and anxiety and hypervigilance, they hang around, and they are intense at times. And again, compassion, a deep want for understanding, grace, and empathy are very important when you are interacting with somebody with PTSD, because it's very, very real. You may not be able to see it like you would see somebody with a knee that's blown out in a sports injury, or who had back surgery, or had their gallbladder removed, or whatever the physical injury may be, but the pain and the crushing weight of it is just as real. I try to explain to people as well, because all of us have felt anxiety, depression, and been hypervigilant at times, and we've had a loss of interest in something for a while or whatever it might be. For me, in struggling with trauma and stressor disorder, there is zero normal life. There is no margin for life. It's either anxiety or depression or anger, and those are the three things that I bounce around in. That's it. Whereas most people are anxious, they're depressed, and they've got all sorts of normal life to live. They get upset or angry about something, and there's all of this life in between that they get to live. With PTSD, all three of them are warring against each other all of the time, and it's really a difficult road, but a road that we will overcome, a road that we will fight for healing, that we will fight for knowledge, that we will fight for shining a light and bringing encouragement and hope for sure. With all of those high intensity feelings that you're feeling all of the time, there is no way that your body can't have a physical reaction to it. And for instance, my physical reaction to major depressive disorder, anxiety, fear, and anger is to be completely wiped out and worn out in who I am when I'm walking through those things. I'm just worn out. I'm spent. My tank is empty. My margin for being able to handle things that in the past were pile it on high, stack it high, and hand it over and I'll handle it, that margin is absolutely gone. I just don't have it in me anymore. And it takes a physiological toll on my body to go through triggers. When I'm triggered, when I, whether it be, it's different for different people, names, smells, locations, text messages, emails, the sight of somebody, other people talking about somebody can be very, very real triggers that start the fight, flight, freeze, fawn mechanism going again, and it ultimately ends up with being completely worn out. So today I just wanted to talk about those topics on what PTSD feels like for me, in hopes that if you are struggling with it, you're able to point somebody to a short video that explains what it feels like and what it's like to exist with battling trauma and stressor disorder. If you already have trauma and stressor disorder, I hope this video was encouraging of what you're walking through. If you're undiagnosed and you're struggling with these things, I just plead with you that you would get help, that you would make that phone call to get help, to have people in the healthcare community start helping you and start unwrapping the unresolved trauma and start addressing the ways that it's manifesting itself in your particular life. I just felt like it was an important topic to get out there. It's an important topic to be able to easily find. And again, the title of this will be, what does it feel like for me to have PTSD? There are certain things I can't do anymore. There are certain things that used to be unbelievably fun that I no longer am able to do. And that's okay, because I'm learning to love the new me, just like I'm going to challenge you throughout the course of this series to love the new you. That beautiful soul inside of you and your purpose in life is still just as important, is still just as great, and is still just as attainable in spite of PTSD. So I hope this message gives you hope and encouragement. I hope you get help. I hope you forward this on to somebody that might need to hear this. And please subscribe to this channel, PTSD Through the Darkness. Please hit the notification button. I'm going to be putting out a number of topics a lot like this, where I just openly talk about my journey with PTSD in hopes of, again, shining a bright light and bringing knowledge and bringing care and compassion and a level of encouragement that pushes you to take that first step or to continue on in your attacking of the trauma that was of no fault of your own that is manifesting itself and being a pain in the rear end in your life. So thanks for being with me. I appreciate you taking the time. Take care of yourself, be well, and we'll see you next time.